Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to a very sad case, and it's the case of the two moms that were murdered up in Oklahoma. We're talking about Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly. I want to send our deepest condolences out to their friends and families. Again, a very, very sad case. Thankfully, some suspects have been arrested. I want to tell you that they are all innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But five suspects have been arrested, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. The other thing I want to focus on is, that we're looking at a case where there was an abduction, and in this abduction, to us in the beginning, if you go back and look at our other videos, we didn't see the sophistication. Okay. We felt this may not be the person's first rodeo, but we were really at a loss when it came to sophistication. We really didn't see that there. So we thought to ourselves, well, sooner or later, something's going to pop and something's going to be arrested. I personally did not believe that somebody was going to get arrested as soon as they did. Also today, we have and are honored to have Dustin Ranck. Dustin is fantastic. He's a private investigator. He really has put a lot of research into Oklahoma. He's done a deep dive. Dustin, fantastic work. There's no question about it. And
Thanks,
he's got
John.
a lot of good information I think you'll be interested in because there are a lot of questions and mysteries that need to be answered. And I'm going to tell you, I'm curious. I'm really curious about all the thinking that went into that and the motive or motives that went into these murders. Okay. Also, we'll be having a series down the line on addiction. Let us know what you think about that. Addiction is, death's best friend as far as we're concerned, addictive illness. And we'd like to know what you think about that. We're doing a poll to see who's interested. So let us know if you're interested. And if you like what we have to say today, please like us and subscribe. We always love to hear from you. We love to have you on board with the family. And this way, we can also get your comments and your views on what we're saying. And, like I always say, two heads are better than one. And, a couple thousand heads are better than two, right? So let's everybody, put their input in and let's try and unravel and deep dive this mystery and see if we can come up with the major why did you do such a thing? Why did you people put this kind of conspiracy together to rob these children of their mothers and to brutally and again, you're innocent until proven guilty. All suspects are, but as far as law enforcement goes, they want to know why you brutally killed these women. With that being said, Dustin, how are you?
I'm great, John. Thanks for having me back. It's great to see you,
Uh,
as always.
and great to see you, my friend. We love to have you on. Dustin, you have deep dived this. You've looked, that area. You've looked into that area. You've really done some great research on those counties up there. Talk about it. Tell us what you have found. What your thinking is up there.
Yeah, as far as the counties go, and it's for the people out there that, live there, it's not a mystery. But for people that don't know, it kind of gets classified as like, I've seen it classified as no man's land and, not necessarily in a negative light, but there's actually a lot more going on out there than people tend to realize. I mean, Oklahoma historically has been a huge energy state, first with crude oil and then obviously natural gas. And now we have wind farming and all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
So, when you get into, looking at what's going on, yeah, there's some agriculture out there. And of course, like speaking of agriculture, and this is a conversation that we had too, like the wholesale marijuana grows that are going on around the state is a huge topic when you start talking to locals. And there's a couple of different avenues that conversation takes. I mean, Oklahoma historically is a little bit conservative, not like it used to be, but so there's people that just really don't like that. There's some questions about how the marijuana laws are structured. Then the real big thing is, foreign nationals buying up property to run these grow ops. So that, when you've got you know, people that are not U.S. citizens, buying up large tracts of land. And I'm not talking from like a xenophobic, lens here. I'm just talking from like a national security, like a tactical approach. Like, if you've got contentious relations with another world power, you don't want them buying up, 25% of your land holdings or whatever. It's just not a smart move. It has nothing to do with the people themselves. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you've got, corn and wheat are typically grown out there. I think sorghum is another deal. It's very arid out there. They do get some rain, but the last few years, John, Oklahoma's just getting creamed with a drought, and especially up in the panhandle there. I mean, it's just brutal. So, you know, you can and you do grow stuff. The problem is that, the aquifers that lie under there that have been fed and stored for millions of years, the entities that kind of regulate that, it's not really to put it simply, it's kind of on an honor system, right? Like where you get an allotted amount of water because you're trying to preserve the aquifer a bit because it's not replenishing fast enough to keep up with demand. But the reality is, like when you're growing crops out there, and not so much weed, but like corn, like the big where you've got huge hundreds and hundreds of acre spreads, like those take a lot more water typically than what people are allotted. Now, that doesn't mean that they're doing anything illegal. It doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. It just means they're trying to stay in business. That, as we talked on another show, that land out there, it's still pretty rugged. We've got multiple generations of people living out there. I mean, if you're living out there, you kind of got to make a living. I mean, it's not like you just putting your feet up. Now, there are, when it comes to gas and oil leases, there is a lot of generational money when you're looking at those properties out there, and especially when you've got hundreds and even thousands of acres that have been within a family for, one, two, maybe now going on three generations. Like some of those oil and gas leases, man, they're still kicking money loose. So it's not where the bulk of the production is, but it's still pretty serious. I mean, so between that and agriculture and the wholesale marijuana gig and everything else, it's not a how would you want to say it? There's more going on there than you would typically think if you were just driving through it. You didn't know the players and you didn't know the area. It's actually pretty interesting when you start talking to the locals there, like, because they've got a lot of interesting history, not just with them, but their interconnectedness with their communities and so forth over generations. So, those things, agriculture and energy, play a huge, huge part in the economy of that area.
Yeah, and you mentioned something interesting when you talk about how arid, is that the correct word? The land
Yeah,
is there, right? So I'm thinking to myself, because it is so arid and they buried these women 10 feet down at least, okay,
yep.
would that help keep the body from decaying?
Absolutely. It is going to depend a little. Now, see, you got to remember the water table out there can be anywhere from about 12 feet to a couple hundred feet, depending on where you are. But 10 feet, you're probably not into damp soil. It's cool and it's dry.
Mm-hmm.
It is a perfect refrigeration tank to put something there that you don't want it to decompose, or maybe you don't know that it's not going to decompose. It, as compared to a place like Hawaii, right? Like I've got some tattoo connections there, quite a few tattoo connections there. And somebody I knew way back in the day, was studying with a really well-known forensics professor down on Oahu. And they have body farms, and they do them there with pig carcasses or donated bodies, because the rate of decomp is so extreme because of the wet, hot weather. They're studying the entomology, the insect angle, they're studying the decay rate and everything else. Out here, man, you're gonna be waiting a long time for that. I mean, if you were to throw like a deer carcass, for instance, I mean, hell, you'll have bones sitting on the side of the road, kind of indefinitely unless they get picked up or blown away. I mean, predators will come and strip the carcass for sure. But yeah, if you're burying something 10 feet down, 10 feet down, it's like, I don't know, 64, 65, 66 degrees and dry. You're not exposed to UV radiation. You're not exposed to water. It's a perfect cocoon. So I have to believe that, if the two women were able to get any DNA samples, like in a fight or a struggle, which I believe is true. I can't say, but I just know the people there. As we talked, I think the first time we started, getting into this, is that I can't see two women from that area, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, going down without a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're great people out there, but they are not pushovers either. So if they've got DNA evidence in the form of a struggle, man, it's going to be as good as kept in a fridge. So let's hope that that is part of the information stream that the FBI and the OSBI and everybody that's worked so hard on this is getting some benefit from.
Yeah, there's some major talk out there about Veronica brutally fighting,
Yeah,
behind the car,
yeah,
and that tells me there's probably DNA under her fingernails. One of the suspects was really scratched pretty bad, I think to the point of bleeding. So now we got maybe blood evidence as well, of course, DNA,
yeah,
other trace evidence. But what you're essentially saying is, all this evidence would be connected to their bodies and would be in a place that it is so arid that it would preserve this for God knows how long. Okay. And
yeah,
you don't have to worry about predation. I mean, animals getting to it or to them or anything else. So, I mean, they're going to have a lot of this is forensically rich, is what it is.
yeah,
It's like a vault
yeah,
buried underground, right? So
yeah,
I really think law enforcement's really going to find a lot of really great evidence, physical evidence, and that's going to certainly help the case. Something else you were talking about, the talk of the foreign investors and everything, foreign nationals and everything. I mean, that got to the point where Oklahoma produced some kind of law, right, to stop foreign nationals from coming in.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was actually a House bill. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can't remember if I send you that link or not, because I couldn't remember. I knew that it's a big topic down in Oklahoma, and I couldn't remember the exact timeline, so I had to go look it up. But I know for sure, going back a number of years, maybe to 2016, 17, somewhere around there, I know that there were some pretty good chunks of land that were bought up by some foreign nationals, and with the idea that they were going to get these wholesale grow operations up and running. Well, you know they don't have any connection to those communities. They're not out there making friends with the locals, so they didn't like really hit the ground running as terms of making any inroads with the folks and the culture or anything out there. They just got blackballed. They got those whether it's permits or licenses. I mean, I'm not in the, grow op myself, so I don't know the exact mechanism that, when you apply, I assume it's some sort of licensure, which would make a lot of sense. But I know for sure that they got blackballed and that was it. So, and I know for sure they're still not growing anything out there, even though they still own the property. So,
Yeah, you answered a big question for me and probably for a lot of our viewers too, because we keep hearing that Tiffany and her boyfriend, Tiffany Adams and her boyfriend, really had a lot of money. They're really wealthy. I mean, I keep hearing that over and over and over. and they own a lot of land. They own a lot of land. They own a lot of land. So of course, the question I'm saying and I'm asking myself is, okay,
Hmm.
so is land that expensive out there? Is land worth that much out there? What would they do with that land? That's what led me into asking you to take a look at it, deep dive into it, and you knew
Yeah.
much of the answers right off the top of your head, but you did the work anyway. I mean, and the answers you came back with were great. I mean, they were right on because how do you why do you keep investing in land? It's not like there's a lot of people there. It's not like it's going to be a metropolis anytime soon, right?
Right.
It's not like you're going to be seeing all kinds of industry and buildings and everything else going on up there on that land, right? So
Hmm.
that's when I started dancing with, well, is there foreign nationals like China or, somebody else trying to, purchase land up there and everything and then kind of looking at something you brought up too that insiders might know, right? So I mean that was a good point you made. So then I think to myself, okay, so who's an insider? What are the insiders? And because these are supposedly called the misfits or belong to this misfits and they're against the government or this, that, and everything else, right? And then all of a sudden it pops up that Tiffany is a major player with the Republican Party up there, right? She's into politics, right?
Hmm.
And so then I start to ask myself, well, what does that mean? Is she considered an insider? Would she know exactly if anything's going on, like development or anything new is going to change up there, and that's going to use this land for any financial
Hmm.
reason, right? And which makes sense that you'd want to own land because you'd make a lot of money if like tomorrow they were going to build some major structure up there, like apartment buildings or something like that, or some big company was moving in or whatever, because why keep the investment in the land? And I think you've answered that pretty well. Because don't forget, we're at times, I mean, I don't know out there about the land and interest rates and property for sale, but through this inflation crisis and everything else, I mean, yeah, you had property going up, but you had interest rates going up, and
Hmm.
a lot of there weren't as many people buying anything, they weren't buying homes, let alone property like that. So I was just trying to wrap my head around it, where all this wealth came from. And could that be a motive? Could that be a motive? Because what is hers will eventually become her, children's, right? Her son and any other children, right? Which will automatically become the grandchildren. Okay. Her son's children will become heirs at
Hmm.
some point. So, do you want your heirs to be with you? All right. And
Hmm.
to handle the estate and the wealth and all that? Or do you want Veronica involved to have any kind of say in that whatsoever as well? All right. Now, I'm just throwing stuff out there. We play,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're always
Yeah.
looking for angles, right? So,
Right.
that's something I'm kicking around. And, so I guess following the money, that's one piece of it. Um, and I think that the other thing that jumps out at me is, how enmeshed was Tiffany with her grandchildren, right? I mean, because it seems like she was pretty enmeshed and obsessed with them. And there's a syndrome out there, they call it grandparent syndrome, I'm sure some of our viewers are very familiar with it, where grandparents really become obsessed and over enmeshed with their grandchildren. Okay. Sometimes to the point where the kids, the mom or dad, whoever has to say, hey, cool it, grandpa or grandma, I mean, you're getting to controlling here or whatever. But with this type of syndrome as well, it's like where the grandparents really believe at some level they can empathize with the grandchildren, and in some cases they believe they know what these younger children are thinking, going through, what they're feeling, you know and that's something else that's kind of jumping out at me, because it's looking like an obsession in a way to me. That Tiffany had an obsession with her grandkids, and she wanted them. She did not want to lose custody. She did not want her son to lose custody of these kids. Okay. For whatever
Hmm.
reason, to the point where it became kind of insane, if you want, all right, where you craft this conspiracy, you get all these other people involved, which we talked about. There'd be loose links. Some of these links would not hold up. Some of these links were going to be weak links. They were going to break.
Right.
There was going to be talking, because it did not look sophisticated. It didn't look like a professional kind of job to begin with. You and I said that right from the beginning.
Hmm.
In our first video, anybody that wants to go back and look at our first couple of videos, they can go back and see that we called his shot right off the hop. And so she's consumed, to the point where she orchestrates based on what law enforcement's saying. Again, she's innocent until proven guilty, but they're saying she orchestrated this to the point of where she's coordinating it with burner phones, stun guns.
Hmm.
Being they've picked out a place to ambush. They have a place to bury the bodies. I mean, so I'm looking again for motive here, and I'm just wondering how enmeshed she was with these two kids. I mean, she even supposedly made a really life-threatening remark to her son or something about the custody and the kids and stuff. I forget exactly what it was, but I mean, really, really, really kind of, we'll call it completely obsessed with not losing custody of these kids, making sure these kids stayed with her house, stayed
Hmm.
with her, right? She played some games supposedly with the supervisor, told the supervisor to take a couple weeks off or something while she was
Yeah.
hatching this plan. I mean, so it's pretty interesting. I mean, what do you think about any of that?
Yeah. That you brought up some really good points, John, and I'm going to kind of backtrack just a little bit here when you're talking about, like like family wealth, you know, it wasn't that long ago. And I mean, we're talking within the last 20 years, maybe 25 at the outset, that land out there, at least quite a bit of it, not all of it, but I would say more than most of it was well below the $1,000 an acre price point, right? Like we're talking into the mid hundreds, the high hundreds per acre, right? Now with all of the, between the land being used for grow ops, and it's legitimate agriculture land too. So it's not the only stuff they're growing out there, but it's hard to make a living growing crops out there. The weather is brutal, man. I mean, it's aside from it being dry, it's just extreme all the time. I mean, the old saying in Oklahoma, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, and that's completely true. But you got to remember too, and kind of going back to our earlier conversations, if we're going back to let's say we go back even one generation. Hell, that land wasn't worth a lot for sure. Now they might have had some oil leases or some gas leases that were kicking some dough loose for sure. And that is no joke. Like that can really generate some cash. But historically, like if that land has been in somebody's family since say 1920, or during the land run, which I think was around 1889, where most of that stuff was scooped up for free, that all that is pure profit in terms of equity. So now you've got something that came into the family. It talk about getting into it on the low end, and now a lot of that land's going for upwards of $2,000 an acre, and that isn't like living in the city, or a place that's more highly populated. Because it's remote, people tend to own lots of land. I mean, heck, 500,000 acres, that's nothing for somebody out there to own.
Wow.
I mean, and if you're talking about running cattle or wind farm, I mean, 500,000 acres, 2,000 acres, now you're talking legit money. So, wanting to preserve that, if you kind of have that mindset, like you're talking about that obsession, like of carrying on the family name, and, obsession with these kids, and wanting to make sure that they're controlled and coming up the way that you see fit, regardless of how healthy or not healthy it is. And I don't know Ms. Adams, so I'm not commenting on her, anything about her in that way. But what I'm saying is, you could see somebody getting into a pretty extreme mindset around protecting that asset.
Mhm.
If that land has been in their family for a while, or they just maybe came into it later down the road, but now it's appreciated, that's worth a ton of money, man. So there's certainly that angle. And because you've got large chunks of land in a remote area that is capable of multiple ways of producing serious revenue, you've got nobody out there watching you. I mean, yeah, some of that, you're not going to have any control. If you got a gas lease or an oil lease, like, yeah, obviously you're not tampering around with that stuff, or wind farms. I mean, that's set up by companies. They lease the land from the owners, and they take care of all the maintenance. They take care of all the ingress and egress. They pay you to build the roads in and out. Like, I mean, they do not mess around. It's big dollar stuff. But when it comes to agriculture or running cattle, that's a different story. I mean, it's either way, you got a lot of earning potential in a place like that. And if you're an empire builder, that is a prime location to do it, because it's just really not, it's kind of the best kept secret. We look at the West Coast, I have a little more connection to the West Coast, where you're an East Coast guy. And hell, I remember as a kid, there was property down by the beach that was virtually worthless because you couldn't farm it and you couldn't get anything from it. Man, as soon as Hollywood started blowing up and the oil drilling started taking off there, man, you look at guys like Bob Hope, early Hollywood, superstar out there. That guy, when he died, and I don't remember what it was, it's been over 20 years probably, he was like worth billions of dollars, but it was in
Absolutely. Yeah.
property. Yeah, that he scooped up when he was, started making money, like whatever it was in the 20s and 30s, when that land was not worth anything. So you could see somebody, and legitimately, people out there, families and individuals, they have to think that far ahead,
Mhm.
because it's just a tough place to make a business.
Mhm.
Weather, if you got crops, I mean, hell, the weather could destroy an entire field of cattle. It might even remove them, if you've got a big enough storm that rips through there. So you've got to be, wells dry up, water dries up, aquifers, get limited, all kinds of stuff. So typically families are, and the industry that's out there, it's not just people, but even the energy companies, they're thinking 10, 20, 50 years down the road, because they have to. They need to find either the next big thing coming down the pipeline, which in case of Oklahoma and a lot of areas, and in the Midwest where I'm located, is fracking. Now they've learned how to reach these gas tables in ways that they could never do it before. And when that started like really jumping off, 10, 15 years ago, man, I mean, you talk about the amount of money that was coming out of the ground was insane. So, but that, that's been the next thing. But you got to know that, the people and the companies are looking at what's the next thing. They're always looking. And what's the next thing? Wind farms. Boom, those go in. They come in and they do all these. Oh, I don't know exactly. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist, but they come in and they do a lot of studies to find out where the wind pathways are out there. You've seen them. Those structures they're massive. They're huge. I think they're pretty cool. They're certainly not bothering anybody. It's a easy way to make money out here. You stick it up there, wind blows it around all the time. So, you got people coming in and, these doing studies, looking at land. Man, when you got a lease, because I know some folks out there that have scored on those windmill leases, and, they're getting free power, they're getting lease kickbacks. Kickbacks is the wrong word. They're getting lease proceeds from the energy companies, and that is real money. You will see more electric vehicles driving around in Oklahoma than you will on the West Coast, almost exclusive, with the exception of some of the big hubs like LA and maybe the Bay Area. But they're literally everywhere. And a lot of times that is due to these residual energy incomes that people have. So,
yeah, and we've covered pretty much the possible financial motive, okay, and why it was important for her to keep custody of the kids and her son. However, and certainly her son doesn't seem to be involved in this whatsoever, based on what we know so far. He's completely innocent. But it gives us an idea of keeping the wealth within the family system, the family structure. That's one part of it. And of course, the motive that's upfront, looking everybody in the face, is, she did not want the kids around Veronica's brother, okay, because supposedly he's a pedophile, and supposedly, there was a real fear of he sexually abusing them. We have to say SAing them for YouTube's sake, right? But so that's another piece of it too. So what I want to do is I want to think about, I've got a couple other angles on motive, and I want to think about those and save them for the next show, because I don't have enough info right now. But the next show definitely will be on another motive and possible motive. And I think I have an idea on where the defense is going to be going on this. They're caught red-handed basically by law enforcement. So this is what law enforcement says, with their hand in the proverbial cookie jar. But the bottom line is, I'm if you stop working the angles work you, right? So
right.
we have to look at some other angles as well, and I think the audience would be interested in our next show. I want to focus more on emotional, psychological motives as well, along with what's been upfront supposedly in protecting the kids. But there's such a thing as overkill, literally. All right.
Yeah.
This is really literally overkill. Okay. And
literally.
I think we have to really analyze and go over this. Is there anything else you want to say before we break? Because you've brought a lot of really good stuff to the table, and as I'm looking over it here, I don't know if I have any more. I have some possibilities, but I'd like to share them with the audience next time, not now. Okay, but again, the loose links, right? The links.
That's right.
The chain they had, too many people knew. and a
Yeah.
couple of those links were loose, and that led to their demise. And quickly
Hmm.
did they get arrested. I thought maybe we'd see some answers here, but I didn't expect this to be done so quick, so fast. I expected this to
Yeah.
take some time, some real time here, because of it
Absolutely, John.
rural and out there, and I mean, how guarded maybe the culture of the population is,
Hmm.
wanting to snitch on anybody or whatever. But kudos to this young, brave 16-year-old girl. And something
For
you
real.
mentioned, she has to be under protection consistently. Okay. And there is no question about it. They've really got to
Absolutely.
protect her. Okay. So is there anything else, my friend, before we break?
I don't think so, unless you want to get into that responsibility statement that we had talked about. Well, we could save that for another show too. When we were talking about the warrant and Adams's, her, as opposed to saying I killed somebody or had
Oh,
a hand in it, just simply said
yeah.
I was responsible for it. There's a bit of a rabbit hole there. So if you don't want to get into it today, that's totally cool. We could make a show just on that all alone, but it definitely ties into that empire building and consolidation kind of mindset that you're talking about.
Yeah, and saying I'm responsible, and I don't know if we have that nailed down perfectly on what her statement was, but I think her statement was, maybe you know better than me, I'm responsible for this, but she did not say I killed those people.
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
that gets really tricky when you've got hired guns. I'm talking
Hmm.
high-end defense attorneys that will be descending on that
Yep.
area, coming in from out of town. And because if she got the money, they've got
Yep.
the defense strategy. And I think we should leave that for another show. I really do, because
Yeah.
we've been on here a while, and sometimes people don't have a long attention span. Me included,
Same
right?
here.
Me included. Okay. So
Yeah.
listen, thank you. Thanks a million for being here. We really can't thank you enough for your research and the investigation you did here. And I want to thank our audience. Thank you so much, guys, for hanging with us and putting up with us and listening to us. And hopefully we gave you a couple nuggets of information, something you'd like to comment on. We'd love to hear your comments. I'd like to hear what you think. And to our audience and to everybody out there, most importantly, stay safe. Be careful out there. We live in a dangerous world. Until next time, take care and God bless. We'll see you then.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John, and thanks to your audience as well. And want to give a big shout out to the locals out there in the
Oh, yeah, you did
Panhandle
a good
because,
job.
man, without those, I mean, not only does that take a huge amount of courage to start, speaking up, but they did, and I know that is, like you said, that's is a direct result of these folks getting wrapped up so quickly. And man, big props to those guys. Wow, that's a big deal.
For sure. Again, take care and God bless, folks. Thank you so much. Bye now.